Since this is a full of non-Indian audience here, I don't know how much you know about India. So therefore, don't mind, I'll take you into a little lesson of history, but it will be more like a story. Because the story of India is the story of humankind. Those who do not know, I come from a land which is the oldest civilization in the world. I come from a land which is the only surviving continuous civilization of the world. In this history of humanity, there have been many civilizations, great civilizations, but all of them perished, not just perished, they were destroyed by some evil people. But I come from a land which survived. We are more than 5,000-year-old civilization. While Greek civilization, Roman civilization, Egyptian civilization, you name it, Aztec civilization, all civilizations perished. They don't exist anymore. But Indian civilization exists and flourishes. It is very important to ask why. But before I answer why, I want to tell you what we have gone through. 5,000 years ago, the first texts, scriptures, which were written in Sanskrit called Vedas, which Albert Einstein used to keep those copies next to his bed. Shiva is the oldest yogi. You know yoga, all of you? He is the oldest yogi. Some people claim 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, but that doesn't matter. If you go to Switzerland, there is the world's most advanced particle science and the largest particle science lab called CERN, C-E-R-N. That is the apex body of quantum physics. There is nothing more advanced than that. At the entrance, you will find a statue of an Indian god called Shiva. And he's dancing. And his dance is called the cosmic dance of Shiva. That cosmic dance is about continuous construction and destruction. And this god called Shiva is the only god in the entire history of humanity who doesn't have two eyes. He has a third eye, which is here in the center. You saw Purnima ji putting a red tilak on my head. That symbolizes the third eye. All the greatest of the scientists, physicists, Nobel Prize winners, if you read some of the greatest thought books on physics, the Tao of Physics, the Zen and Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, or you read papers of people, Einstein and Bohr and Fritjof Capra and all these, the greatest physicists come philosophers, everybody has written long chapters on Shiva. Because he was not a god like anyone else. He was a scientist. His philosophy was that you are God. You are the cosmos. And today quantum physics is also proving the same thing, that the smallest cell of your body has the same energy which the cosmos has. Therefore your cell is as powerful as the cosmos, and that's what the science of atomic physics depends on. But Shiva gave this world the concept of oneness. This entire world is divided between left brain or right brain, left party or right party, east versus west, north versus south, Republican versus Democrats. Entire world is divided between left brain thinking and right brain thinking. And that's why we have conflicts and problems in this world. And because we are divided into left and right, the evil people, the terrorists, the criminals, the gangsters, they take advantage of this situation. Because we are divided into left and right, east and west, developed countries and underdeveloped countries, first world countries and third world countries, this intellectual division which we have created, which is why the terrorism is flourishing and humanity is declining. And that's why thousands of years ago, Shiva said, third eye is when left and right meets. When we believe in the wholeness, the oneness, that's where humanity lies. Today, the world is recognizing that. So I come from that land. And Shiva's abode was Kashmir. Second thing, when does terrorism flourish? When there are no nuances in the society. What is the soul of culture? What is culture after all? Everybody talks about culture. Every single politician talks about culture. We talk about cultural diversity. We talk about empathy. We talk about compassion. We talk about all these big, high concept things, but very few people understand where do they flourish. How does this flower called culture nurtures? The soul of culture is art, literature, poetry, music, education. Without these things, there will be no culture. Imagine culture without all these things. It's not possible. And whenever art, music, culture, beauty, all these things go down, there are wars. That is tribal living. So, to take human beings, evolve from tribal consciousness to humanity consciousness, you need these things. That's why you send your children to school. Why do they go to school? Why do we believe in education? So, in Kashmir, which is India, people realized that these are the most important things for human beings to live happily, peacefully, and equally. And therefore, metaphorically, they created a goddess called Saraswati. And this goddess is a goddess of wisdom, education, music, art, literature, painting, every nice, beautiful thing you can imagine of. And this goddess wears a sheer cloth so that her body is absolutely transparent. That is a metaphor for transparency. No hidden agenda. Such is the creative land of Kashmir. I can go on and on. All this yoga which everybody is practicing today was invented in the land of Kashmir. 5,000 years ago. And while the modern medical science is based on cutting human bodies, yoga is based on observing living bodies. So it's a living medical science. While the modern allopathic medical science is about curing diseases, yoga is about preventing diseases. Yoga is about controlling mind, because mind is the biggest enemy of human beings. Your mind is never still. As I'm talking, your mind is going in 1,000 directions. It says, calm down, go internalize. Anyway, so all these greatest of the concepts were created in Kashmir, which is India, the world's only surviving spiritual land. If you have questions related to life, if you have questions related to money, house, wealth, power, come to USA, But if you have questions related to life, family, relationships, trust, faith, you can come to India, you'll find all the answers. That is where I come from. When I need money, I come to USA. And I go back with lots of dollars.
Really?
But when I have questions related to who am I, why am I here on this earth, what is my relationship with you, how we are connected, and what is humanity, I look at the East. From India, for 1,000 years, there was an intellectual debate between one argument of Hinduism and another argument between, if you have heard the name Buddha. You know Buddha?
Yes.
And then they come with a theory, and the Buddhist followers traveled and all over the East, without any war, without forcing anyone, everybody became a Buddhist, be it China, Taiwan, Japan, everywhere. Today, the most modern management companies follow Zen, which is actually an Indian word, dhyan, which means meditation. Now look at the other side. While we were discovering how to live peacefully with oneness, with art, literature, and all these things, there were people who were colonizing the world with guns and swords. As you have seen, you can go and check in Google that before India was invaded, India controlled 40% of the world GDP, gross domestic product. It was called a golden bird. Even today, the world's biggest diamond is kept in England, which is Indian, called Kohinoor. India slowly became, all these people from China, from the West, from Africa, all of them came to do research in this place called Kashmir. Kashmir became the Silicon Valley of the first millennium. It became the knowledge center. Greek people, Socrates and Plato, on record have called it the cradle of civilization. It's all sounding strange to you, I know, because nobody has ever told you. Why nobody told you? If you think this info war, this war, knowledge war, the cyber war, controlling knowledge is a new war, you're mistaken. This is the oldest tactic of enemies of humanity. They want to control knowledge. They want to control the minds of the people. And that's why India was invaded. Some religious, fanatic, radical tyrants came to Kashmir. They were persecuted in Iraq and Iran and Uzbekistan, all these countries where New Islam was flourishing, they were persecuted. So they came to India and especially Kashmir. And slowly, with the help of the sword and guns, they forced people to convert to their faith. Hitler used concentration camps. These Islamic tyrants used a methodology which is known as force and compulsion. And slowly this land, the Silicon Valley, was destroyed one by one, first by Islamic tyrants and then the British colonizers. For 1,000 years, India was ruled, looted, raped for 800 years by these tyrants and for 200 years by British colonizers. Not just British colonizers, Portuguese colonizers and French colonizers. We not even once picked up guns. We did not even pick up stones to throw at them. If you have heard the name of Gandhi, we peacefully found our freedom. Because we are the land of oneness, we are the land of Saraswati, which means knowledge. And today, in this land, the Silicon Valley, all those people, these were startups. Yoga was a startup. Yeah, seriously, no kidding. Somebody said, let's observe human bodies and see what we can do with this. Do you know the grammar, which all languages use today, has origins in Kashmir. It was invented in Kashmir. The philosophy, the modern philosophy is all based on it. You read all the greatest Western German philosophers, you will find all of them start with Upanishad. Upanishads were written over here. This was a Silicon Valley. I am giving you that example because it was not called Silicon Valley, it was called Kashmir Valley. If I say Kashmir Valley, you may not understand what I am saying because nobody taught you. Nobody teaches about the stolen knowledge. This Silicon Valley, the knowledge center, was destroyed by religious fanaticism. Do you know Afghanistan? All of you know about Afghanistan? Afghanistan, I'm sure all of you know what US recently did in Afghanistan. You must have seen those 20 years US spent $3 trillion, which is today a nursery of terrorism, actually was one of the most cultured places on this earth. But then religious fanatics destroyed. It had the largest statues of Buddha. Buddha, the Messiah of peace. They destroyed them. They destroyed all the temples. They destroyed art, music, culture. And today in Kashmir, you are not allowed to sing. You are not allowed to dance. You are not allowed to write poetry. You are allowed to do nothing except for religious prayers. And if you utter a word against that, you are shot. Or they issue a life threat, which is called fatwa, Fatwa. You must have seen there is a fatwa against me.
Yes.
As I stand here, these terrorists want to silence me. This is such a painful story. The reason you don't know about this is that people fear them. When Charlie Hebdo makes some cartoons in France, they go and kill them. Twin Towers, the World Trade Center, I have seen them falling. In Mumbai, the most beautiful and the oldest hotel of the world, the top 10 hotels of the world, Taj Mahal, is such a beautiful property. They came and shot people. And those people were not just Indians. They were Americans, French, German, Japanese, Koreans. Today, Kashmir is ruined. A region which had 100% Hindu population, and Hinduism there is not religious. It's all philosophical. It's not religious. Shiva is not a religion. Shiva is not a god of a religion. Shiva is a more philosopher. Their 100% Hindu population in 70 years has become 0%. On 19th January 1990, suddenly in the evening, around 5 or 6, from all the mosques, the loudspeakers started blaring Ralif, Galif, Shalif, which simply means either you convert to my faith, or run away, or die. The entire valley of Kashmir, like the first Silicon Valley, was filled with these sounds. And then hundreds of thousands of these fanatic religious boys came on the street with AK-47 supplied by superpowers of Russia and some from USA because of the Cold War. They came on the street and they said, you Kashmiri Pandits like the startup guys, you know, the researchers, the specialists, Hindus primarily, that you Kashmiri Pandits leave Kashmir but without your wives. Leave your wives behind and you run away from here. And 500,000 Kashmiri Pandits on 19th January 1990, in the middle of the night when it is sub-zero degree temperature and Kashmir's winter is like, you just can't imagine how cold it can get. They ran from their houses like cattle in a truck going to a butcher house. They left without their shoes, without clothes, without anything. And because they had so much of knowledge, so much of research, they were very rich people, they ended up living from sub-zero degrees to a desert in Jammu, which was like 110, 120 degrees Fahrenheit. From 10, 20 Fahrenheit to 120, 140 Fahrenheit. In a jungle, 6,000 people died because of snake bites, scorpio bites, and heat. The world remained silent because it was happening somewhere else. It was not happening near my house. And it was not a spectacle. It wasn't two towers falling down. These were just voiceless people in the middle of the night at 12 and 1 running away from their houses. And since then, Kashmir became a house of terrorism. Just to give you an example, I'm sorry, it's very important, that's why I'm telling you. When I was shooting recently, people talk about diversity. Humanity is not possible without diversity. What is humanity? People of different thinking, different mindset, different emotions come together and respect each other. Unfortunately, the modern world has focused a lot on empathy and compassion. The problem with empathy and compassion is that you assume that the other person is weak and you are more powerful. When we talk about empathy, we assume that we are more powerful. But in the land of India, we did not ever talk about empathy and compassion. We talk about respect. Because when you respect the other person, you are equal. When you feel compassionate towards somebody else, you are more powerful. So we said respect everything. And which is why we have 3 million gods. 3 million is not a joke. More, maybe more. The idea was, okay, you like sky, you worship sky. So there is a God for sky. You like trees, you like environment, there is God for environment, for trees. You like rivers, okay, there is a God for river. You believe in anger, okay, there is a God for anger. You believe in jealousy, there is a God for jealousy. You believe in wealth, there is a God for wealth. Whatever you believe in, whatever you want, there is a God. You don't believe in God, okay, be an atheist, still you are a Hindu. Hinduism is not a religion. Hinduism is a philosophy. And that's what they didn't like, because it talks about oneness. And therefore, when you ask any great sage, Indian sage, how to treat others, the answer is very simple. There are no others. They destroyed all this. And just to give you an example, recently when I was shooting in Kashmir, my wife, who couldn't come because she's very sick right now, so she was on a boat in this lake, one of the most beautiful lakes on this earth. If you ever get a chance, and if there is no terrorism, please go and visit them. On this lake, and she was sitting with this Kashmiri Muslim girl who's about 8 years old. And she asked my wife, where do you go to pray, namaz. Namaz means pray, Muslims pray 5 times in a day. Where do you go to do your namaz? Those who have not understood, namaz means prayer to Allah. My wife said, no, I don't do any prayers. She said, why? My wife said, because I am not a Muslim. She said, so what? You ought to pray 5 times a day. My wife said, no, I am a Hindu. She said, so what? Everybody has to do namaz. The point in case here is, this 8-year-old, 9-year-old girl doesn't even know that there are people with different faiths, different practices, different rituals, and different lifestyles. All these young children are brainwashed. They are brainwashed into believing that killing anybody who does not believe in your faith is a service to God, the Almighty, to Allah. And this is not what Quran says. This is not the wise people say that. This is the industry of terrorism which is brainwashing these young people. And they are destroying everything. Most of the Middle East, if you see, is destroyed by terrorism. It has reached the East. It has reached USA. And what has happened recently in Afghanistan, if you think this is a full stop, you are grossly mistaken. Believe you me, this recording will go onto YouTube. Remember me when they will come to your home. Terrorism is the biggest threat to humanity. And the only answer to terrorism is not empathy or compassion. It is to speak up. Hitler did whatever he did because people kept silent. Most of the intellectuals, professors, thinkers, artists thought it's somebody else's problem. It's Jews' problem, what do I have to do? Most of them left Germany and they came to USA. When terrorism started taking place in Iran and Iraq during that period in 80s, most of the Western world kept silent because it was happening somewhere else in the deserts. Whenever terrorism takes place anywhere, most of the powerful people who have the voice, the artists, the professors, the intellectuals, the writers, the thinkers, they keep quiet. And which is why I said I must speak up. The day I decided to speak up, they shoot fatwa, which is a threat to your life, against me. I should have shut up at that time. But if I do, then this terrorism is never going to stop. And that's why I made this film, which is not telling you what humanity is all about. Enough of all that polished, politically correct language. This film will tell you what humanity is not about. Because until and unless you see the ugly face of terrorism, unless you go and experience it like you do in virtual reality in Disney World and Epcot Center and Universal Studios, you feel you are there, you are not going to understand how it feels to live today with terrorism. Therefore, I have made this film, The Kashmir Files. It is the tragedy of the world's oldest and the greatest scholars who today, for last 32 years, have been living outside their homes with the thought lingering that they cannot go back to their homes. Just 1 month ago when I was coming to US, these terrorists went to a school because government of India tried to send some Hindus back to Kashmir so that the demographic changes and people see more diversity. But terrorists went to school. They asked the teachers to show their IDs. The moment they identified they were Hindu teachers who do not believe in their faith, they shot them in front of children. Just 1 month ago. It's a continuous genocide. Holocaust ended after Hitler's death, but this is going on even after Osama bin Laden's death. It's going on and on and on. And the world is silent. So this Friday, I'm showing this film. This film is not just about the pain, agony, and despair or suffering. This is also to remind the world that the answers to terrorism is education, is culture, is respecting diversity. Because the other day you were talking about the congressmen when they did a congressional reception in my honor at the Capitol Hill. Mark Warner, your congressman, also Senator Mark Warner, the Democrat senator, his message was that Kashmiri Pandits are most successful in the most successful communities. This is the only ethnic community on the face of this earth which is 100% educated, not literate, educated. You will find Kashmiri Pandits as doctors, lawyers, educators, and above all, humanists. Their children have become artists, singers, painters, authors, rocket scientists. This is their answer to the world. And before I end, this is something which will surprise you. Not even one Kashmiri Pandit ever, despite being raped, cut into pieces, where women's breasts were cut, where women alive were cut into saw machines alive in front of their children, despite that, not even one retaliated. There is no hate speech from Kashmiri Pandits against Islamic tyrants and terrorists. There is no hate literature. Instead, they force their children to get educated, and so that this world moves from ignorance to knowledge, from darkness to light. We Indians are patient people. Our patience has survived our civilization, and we are the only living, standing civilization on this earth. Because of our patience, we will fight for next 5,000 years against terrorism with peace, with the concept of diversity, culture, respect, and above all, that there are no others, we are all one. Thank you very much.